So I recently made a video responding to the Pronatalist couple, Malcolm and Simone Collins. That video is going to be very relevant to this one, so if you want to go back and watch that in full, then the link is in the description. So I'm now making this video as a follow-up because since recording that video, I received an email with some information I think is worth sharing, given the specific things that were said in the video I reacted to. So since recording that video, I had an email exchange with Simone and Malcolm about a separate matter, but in that exchange, I mentioned that I was doing a reaction video to one of their videos they recently did. Hi Simone and Malcolm. Coincidentally, I am releasing on Sunday a response to your guys' recent video on antinatalism. I hope you enjoy the pushback. I will say I found some of the things Malcolm said unsavory and reflected that in my comments. Just giving you a heads up so you aren't caught off guard. Of course, I'm open to any pushback myself. Stay well, Lawrence. So they then replied with something which I think they said in complete good faith, but I think was worrying enough given the context that I thought people should be made aware of it. Now, before I show the email, I just wanted to leave a quick note, which is that I generally don't think it's okay to share private communication like this, especially when you don't have the consent of the person or people that you've been engaging with. Now, in this instance, I have actually made the Collinses aware that I'm making this video, and they did not show any particular concern with me sharing this information. But also in this specific case, I think there is a good reason to share this information, and obviously we'll get onto that in the rest of the video. So what did they say in the email? Oh, wonderful, Lawrence. We 100% love pushback and especially appreciate commentary and analysis from you, as you come from a very level-headed, logical, intelligent place rather than an emotionally driven reactionary one. We do admit to using more inflammatory language online than logic dictates, as it just performs better, but want you to know that we respect you a lot and consider you a friend, especially because you hold different views and aren't afraid to push back. That's so much more valuable than some party that unquestionably agrees with what we say. Sincerely, Simone and Malcolm. So in terms of what they said about me directly, it's obviously a really nice email, and so that makes me feel kind of bad about where this has led and me making this video, but I think it is still important to make. So in this email, Simone and Malcolm revealed that they use more inflammatory language or go to more extremist rhetoric to get more views on YouTube, basically. It performs better. Now, I'm not making this video about that general phenomena. I mean, this is very common in YouTube, especially in video titles and thumbnails. Things are slightly embellished to encourage people to click on a video. It increases the click-through rate. Why I'm making this video is because that is being done to an extent where it leads to the outright demonization of antinatalists, and specifically a mocking or derision of people who are vulnerable to ending their lives. And this is specifically from Malcolm. And I think it's really disappointing that the rhetoric has gone that extreme and has taken that specific form. Now, before we get into the clips, to be clear, I have not watched all of their content. I've only watched some of their content, and the content I've seen has been biased towards when they're addressing antinatalism, obviously. And I also want to say that from what I've seen, I don't really have an issue at all with Simone. She actually seems very reasonable. From what I've seen, she doesn't tend to go towards this more extremist rhetoric, and she tends to try and be more understanding of the other person or the other view and try and paint it in the best light she can. But Malcolm really doesn't seem to do this, and I've perceived his rhetoric as getting more extreme over time, and in this most recent video, it just seems to have gone out of hand. So let's watch the clip.
How is it that you believe that your existence is at such a privileged level compared to the people who haven't been born yet? How could you even come to be that narcissistic? And this is the thing, right? Fundamentally, is you can always choose to not exist. They can't choose to manifest themselves into existence. And they're like, oh no, but ending myself is so hard. And it's like, no. It's that you don't want to. You are a fundamentally vile and selfish person.
Euthanasia should be a lot easier, and I 1000% agree. Like, yes.
No, of course you agree with that, but that's neither here nor there. Even where euthanasia is not legal, it is really not that hard to unalive yourself. The
Everything's harder when you're depressed. I mean, you know.
I guess, but it's to contrast the difficulty of that with manifesting your existence when somebody decided to sterilize your parents is astronomical.
So obviously this is a horrible way to speak about someone in general, but Malcolm is specifically talking about people who are vulnerable to ending their lives. And just to make it explicit, what I think Malcolm is doing here, he is identifying people who have considered ending their lives, and he is calling them vile and selfish. And the way he's downplaying how hard it is to end one's life is by comparing it to how hard it is for someone to manifest themselves coming into existence. Now, I go into this in more detail in my original video, but the reason that this is downplaying how hard it is to end one's life is because it's comparing it to someone manifesting themselves into existence and the difficulty of that, which is obviously impossible. But the reason that's an issue is because no one suffers any harm from that. There is no tangible existent being who suffers as a result, but someone who is persisting in a life which is actually very harmful to them and they can't bring themselves to end it, even when it would be rational to do so, because there are some cases, there's actual real harm happening to a person there. Now, to speak in this way as a result of erring on more inflammatory rhetoric for views seems really bad to me. And I think it's at the point where it's worth sharing in a video like this so that people know that Malcolm is doing this in his rhetoric, in that he is dishonestly going to the extent of demonizing and ridiculing people who are vulnerable to suicide, and also demonizing antinatalists in general to quite a harsh extent and making massive overgeneralizations, not in good faith and because that's his honest assessment, but because it's more inflammatory for views. Another note I wanted to share is that I've had communications with Simone and Malcolm since recording this video, and they expressed to me that Malcolm's approach to suicidal people is actually honestly held, and that they feel that there's some force behind it that could motivate someone to desist from thinking of killing themselves, and they say they've had some success with that. Now, this may be a sincere view that they hold, but in this instance that we're talking about in this video, you can see from Malcolm's tone and the way that he's speaking, this is clearly not someone approaching suicidal people with the air of wanting to help guide them away from being suicidal. This is clearly someone who is deriding and mocking these people. If you wanted to take a harsh tone with someone of the sort of do it or stop talking about it type approach, then you could do that. But calling someone vile and selfish, this just seems to be outside of that ballpark to me. And I do not feel like that justification covers this instance at all. I feel like it was a very ironically vile approach to antinatalists. I think this is disappointing, and it contributes to a much more divisive discourse and a vicious discourse and a really distasteful discourse. Obviously, I know this is a really important subject to antinatalists. I mean, as antinatalists, we view the creation of new beings into this world as a grave harm to those beings. And obviously, Malcolm and Simone, as pronatalists and the specific views they have, they think that it's really good to bring a being into existence if you can cater for them. So I understand this is an important subject matter for both parties involved, but you have to have at least some sensitivity in the rhetoric you're putting out. So I really hope that the pronatalist couple and Malcolm specifically are going to move away from more inflammatory and extremist rhetoric and come back to a more reasonable discourse that's actually based in reality, because a lot of the things they said, especially in their last video, are simply not based in reality at all. You can't just blame it on a slight embellishment of things. That's my hope anyway, but I think in the meantime, and if that doesn't happen, then I think people have a right to know that this extremist rhetoric that is coming out of, you know, really Malcolm specifically, doesn't seem to be honest at all. And people should know that that's the form of communication that Malcolm is engaging in. Anyway, I hope this leads to something positive. I hope Simone and Malcolm, especially Malcolm, can take this on board, and we will see. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one.